Okay, good morning. Thank you, David, for the kind introduction. I'm Silvia Almagia. Once again, I'm Director of Software and Standards at ETSI, the other SNS. And it's a pleasure to have you all at ETSI today, these SDG communities, but also many other external initiatives that are dealing with standardization, open source, and innovation. I think right now we can all agree that the telco ecosystem is software-driven. We're probably on the way to AI-driven telecom ecosystem, but right now it's already in the software area. We're seeing more and more software in networks, more and more code hardware, more and more virtualized network functions, virtualized network services, software-driven networks, and so on. We're also seeing, since many years now, more and more software in standards. We are seeing standardized data models, standardized API definitions, test specifications, and all those are written in software or pseudocode. And we're also seeing more and more software in research. There's a lot of software that's developed by research projects. Sometimes it's shared as open source, but in any case it's developed as a collaborative effort. And all that is of interest for us, and ETSI response to that telco softwareization is the creation of software development groups. Software development groups is a new type of group in the ETSI directives in December 2022, almost 2 years now. This new type of group has been tailored for collaborative software development in support of standardization. So we were used to bringing companies and people together to develop standards in a collaborative manner. Now we're bringing delegates sometimes from the same companies, but now they're coming not to write standards, but to write software together. We're giving this group the choice of license that best suits the work they're doing, and this includes open source licenses. And we're encouraging them to develop open communities and meritocracy-based governance, because that's something we've learned from open source outside. It's what works best for collaborative software. And we can create one of these groups with the support of at least 4 ETSI members. So it's quite easy if you're developing software in support of standardization. You might be willing to talk to us to see if we can host it. Of course, the SDGs didn't come out of the blue in 2022. They build on a long ETSI experience with software. I mentioned before there's more and more software in standards. But we've also been running open source groups, running open source communities since 2016. This was started, of course, it was not an SDG at the time. The concept did not exist, but we run them. We created this activity as an experimental secretariat project. You probably are familiar with Open Source Mano, which was our biggest triad scale of running an open source project. Open Source Manos is still running since then, and other things have happened since 2016. In the beginning of 2022, we got the request to host Teraflow SDN. This was a new community that was coming from the research world. A group of companies had developed together a cloud-native SDN controller, and they believed in the value of this piece of software. They wanted to give it a longer life after the end of the funding of the project, and they asked ETSI if we could host it. And not only we agreed to host them, but we also decided to take this type of activity seriously and to add the concept of software development group into the ETSI directives. So this was end of 2022. And after that, we have created 2 other software development groups, OpenSlice, developing a network slice manager, offering networks as a service. And lately, beginning of 2024, we started OpenCapif, who's creating a common API framework, enabling the exposure and consumption of APIs in a secure and consistent manner, and aligned with the 3GPP concept of Capif. And lately, June 2024, Teraflow SDN, who was created as an open source group secretariat project, was renewed as an SDG, as a proper SDG, is now completely into the frame of this new concept, and Open Source Mano will be probably following this way in the next months. So if we look at what it takes to build an open, interoperable, innovative and sustainable networking ecosystem, first thing that would come to my mind would be standards. welcome to ETSI. One of the main goals of standardization is interoperability. And we really believe standards are made for that purpose. Of course, you want innovation, you need to be close to research, you need to bring the research communities closer to this standardization world. And you want it to be sustainable, and when we talk about code sustainability, it's code reuse, it's not starting from scratch each time, it's reusing what has been there and taking it further. And when we think about these three types of activities, of course we don't want them to work in silos and each of them develop their own thing. We need some kind of interaction, discussion, collaboration. We need them to work together in order to mutualize efforts. And we think ETSI software development groups have an interesting role to play there. They can somehow act as the glue between these three worlds, or the bridge, as you want. So what do SDGs bring to standardization? One of the first reasons why we started doing this kind of work at ETSI is because they brought a platform to experiment with technologies. Alongside with standardization, we're going to be able to do early validation, validate use cases, experiment with different technologies, and also provide early feedback to standardization. And this is quite interesting, because if we start developing in a collaborative manner in parallel as we are developing the standards in a collaborative manner, we're able to give earlier feedback. We don't need to wait until the standard is published and put out there to start receiving feedback. And having early feedback can be really interesting to shorten development cycles. The standard that we will produce and that we will publish, if it has received early feedback, it will probably be more on scope and had received early validation. And so we believe this kind of collaborative software initiatives can help to put standards in the market in a shortened time. Of course, SDGs and the software they develop, the tools they develop are very, very interesting to disseminate standards and to foster the adoption. There are a lot of communities out there that are not so familiar and so keen on piles of PDFs and piles of specifications. They prefer to download a piece of software, install it, play with it, extend it, and why not provide us feedback and provide new features on top of that software. And SDGs are also a very interesting tool for ETSI for us to learn and adopt new ways of working. There are a lot of things that are used in the open source communities. There are processes, there are tools, there are automatic validation systems that we probably want to reuse. First of all, for the software we put in our standards. For the pseudocode, that doesn't belong in a doc, in a Word document, in a PDF. That pseudocode belongs in a Git repository with some automatic syntax validation. And maybe later on it's something that we can incorporate in the way we develop the standards and we validate our standards as well. When it comes to research, ETSI SDGs are a very interesting way of leveraging and impacting standardization. First of all, if these research initiatives are going to use the software produced by SDGs, they are probably going to get closer to standardization. All the SDGs are somehow related to the standards work. And also it can be a way to channel feedback, and we're seeing this in a number. We're going to see the details through these 2 days, but we're seeing already that sometimes research can collaborate with the SDG community in order to make sure the feedback and the learnings they are getting and the messages they want to send back to standardization are channeled. Very often these SDGs already have a channel with standardization, and that's something we can leverage. It takes a bit of a ramp up to be able to impact standardization, so if you already have a community that knows how, it can be really useful. Of course, I mentioned again reuse and sustainability. We don't want every research project to start from scratch or develop multiple times the same kind of component. If something is already there, maybe it's better to try to see if you can use it, if you can grow it, if you can make it better, and leave it after the end of the funding of the project so that other software projects can reuse it. Some of these components are going to be commodity at one point in time, and it's important that research can focus on innovation, and for commodity they can just use what's already there. SDGs are also a way for research projects to reach global communities beyond the original project boundaries. So it may be help to put them in touch with other companies, other initiatives and spread the word beyond the project communities. And of course, they provide stability and continuity. This comes a bit with what I said before with reuse and sustainability. It's a long-term home where software stays, software grows, and can be reused by other project. And finally, something we've seen that research appreciates is to have a neutral and trusted home where they can put their software, where they can run the governance, and they can benefit from the processes and learnings that we already have. And when it comes to external open source, what do SDGs bring to them? They already have this open source, but why it could be interesting that these external projects collaborate with ETSI SDGs. So first line is the same that we have for research. It can be a way to leverage and impact standardization. Again, SDGs are close to standardization, sometimes have already set up these feedback channels. So external open source can benefit from them as well. It's a way for them to leverage innovation, because we're going to see that all these SDGs, all these open source initiatives are developing and growing a very nice and diverse research ecosystem with multiple projects in them, and that can be leveraged by external open source as well. Again, to promote reuse and sustainability, to reduce the risk of fragmentation by getting close to standardization, we might be able to achieve a world of interoperable components that you can mix and match and eventually replace one by the other without fragmenting the market. And it's also a way to foster adoption from open source to those communities who are less keen on open source, like standardization, like some kind of research initiatives. So during these 2 days, we're going to take you on a journey. As Ricard was explaining, we're going to have multiple sessions, started with access networks and services, telco cloud infrastructure, management and orchestration operations, network exposure. So we're going to see how these different initiatives we're running fit in all these spaces. We're also going to see how they may be combined and how you can achieve bigger use cases and solve bigger problems by combining these pieces of software. But of course, we're not alone. We don't want to just talk about what we do. The idea is also to see how these initiatives combine with classic standardization, how they combine with research communities, and how they also are interacting with external open source. We're really happy to have managed to have a lot of representatives of the initiatives behind these logos in this room today. We're going to be hearing from them. Some of these initiatives are already working with our SDGs, some of them are new, and this is the opportunity to discuss, to share best practices, to learn from each other, to see if we can find the magic recipe for collaboration and synergies. And in any case, we're really, really happy to have all these different initiatives presenting their work, presenting how they collaborate with each other. And yeah, I hope you will enjoy the conference, enjoy these 2 days, and we're really happy to have you here. Welcome to ETSI SNS4SNS.